don't want to operate out of fear. God's not called us to a spirit of fear, but we do want to operate out of fact. So I can't go blindly into it.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Daily Commute. My name is Adam.
And I'm Will.
And today we are joined by a very special guest, Jon Hood. Welcome, Jon.
Thank you. Good morning.
Jon is my wife's father. He's an incredibly wise man. And right when Will and I started talking about putting this podcast together, he was one of the first names that popped into my head as someone I knew we would want to have on the show. Little did I know how timely his expertise would become for the seasons that were yet to come. So Jon, before we really get into this episode, which we're sort of framing around how do we balance risk for the sake of loving others and caution for the sake of protecting them, framing that around things like how do we balance the larger issues of faith, like faith versus fear. What does it look like in this season of a pandemic to balance those two things as a believer? So that's the conversation that we're going to have. But before we get into that, I'm sure the listeners want to know a little bit more about you. So if you could share your name, what do you do for a living, and how long have you been commuting?
Okay, well, first of all, when you started off by saying he's an incredibly wise man, I was thinking there must be a fourth guest joining us here today, because I certainly don't view myself in that way. I'm just kind of a regular old guy that's just trying to figure out how do we live this life of faith, you know. But my name is Jon Hood, and it's probably one of my greatest privileges and a great source of pride to be Hannah's father and Adam's father-in-law, and far above anything that I do in life as a job. But my work is, I'm the Director of Student Services, Safety, and Security for New Albany Plain Local Schools. So I'm a district administrator at a cabinet kind of level there within that school district. And my work's kind of split in half. About half of it's around school safety and security, and the other half's around those big things that would be considered student services. So transportation, food service, school nurses, school counselors, and then all of their well-being kind of initiatives. So drug and alcohol prevention, suicide prevention, just how do we keep kids healthy emotionally too, as well as physically. So that's my work in the district right now. And it's a pleasure to sort of just be able to serve the kingdom through serving children and their educational experiences. So that's the daily kind of task that's in front of me usually. And my commute started when I was a senior in high school. Really, I grew up in a Christian family, but it wasn't until I was a senior in high school that this gentleman that was 10 years older than me, his name was Butch, started just investing himself in me and started just talking to me in really normal ways about how do you live a life of faith. So he was really bold about sharing his walk, but it was super normal. Like, it wasn't weird. It wasn't like this, like a Jesus freak kind of experience, right? It was just this guy just living his life in faith and stumbling and falling, and I just got to see that in there. And I've told Hannah and Adam, I always use the term speaking children into existence as kind of this phrase that sort of fell over me at that time, but Butch sort of spoke me into existence, just this daily conversation about how do you live a life of faith that then just sort of sank in. And then of course it's the Holy Spirit that then prompts us to really reach out. But just seeing that in my own life, it's just an encouragement to all of us to just keep speaking words of truth and words of faith to the people around us, and just really normal kinds of conversations that just draws them into the talk and the debate that's happening within their own heart, and then just let the Holy Spirit do his thing. So that would have been probably maybe 43 years ago, something like that I started the commute.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So you've been on the road a little bit longer than we have at this point.
a few flat tires and a few dings and bumps, but still rolling.
Nice.
Well, thanks for sharing that, John.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have actually got a question for both of you. This question has been plaguing youth groups for centuries. And I mean, honestly, it's something that I think about every single day. I mean, I don't go to bed without thinking about it. When Jesus walked on water, did his feet get wet?
Oh, that is a crucial question there.
I mean, talking about like deep theological issues.
That's the kind of stuff that keeps you up at night right there.
That's it.
Oh, for sure. Oh man, I don't even know. I would have to say no. I don't think so.
You think
I
no?
don't think so. No.
I think they did.
Oh,
Interesting.
Yeah. They had to. He lived with us, right? He was a part of us. He didn't sink in, obviously, but he, when it rained, his clothes got wet. Surely when we walked on the water, his
interesting.
feet got
Okay, so
splashed on.
we're kind of, so with him walking on water, we're kind of at the edge of his humanity and his divinity, with the sense that he can walk on the water, but his feet are still getting wet.
Experience the water.
Yes.
Oh man,
fascinating.
That's an incredible answer. I can't top that in any way. I think
amazing.
you actually, that's probably the best possible answer.
All right, so am I done now? Are we finished now?
Yep.
Let's
wrap it up.
Let's wrap up. Yeah.
We really just wanted you to answer that question. It's been plaguing us.
There you go.
All right. Well.
Yeah. No. Go ahead, Will.
Okay. Okay. So you've kind of alluded to this, and this is one of the big reasons that we want to have you on here. Is the way that your job has required you to kind of step up to the plate a little bit, and how has the coronavirus affected your job, and what kind of role has that put you in the last month or so?
Yeah, so the coronavirus has completely hijacked my job, as well as everybody else's, but particularly in mine, because of the fact that I am just immersed daily in kind of safety kind of issues. It's taken over completely. But I'm an educator. I've been doing this let me think about this. The spring of 21 will be my 40th year in education. So I've been in education for a long time. I consider, you talked about wisdom earlier, Adam. I don't consider myself wise, but I do consider myself to have kind of a skill set around education that not everybody would have, because I've been doing it for 40 years, not because I'm great at it, but just because I've been doing it for a long time. And I think whenever you lead in anything, you have to have some kind of a background to lead from. So if you're being called into new positions in your life, new work in your job, and you don't feel like that skill set's there, you need to go get the skill set. You need to go do the professional development and the things that you need to do, because to lead, there has to be some kind of a background knowledge to lead from. So this would be an example where coronavirus takes over, and I feel like I don't have the background knowledge to truly lead around coronavirus. I've got the background knowledge to lead around safety and to help in decision making around safety, but I don't have the background knowledge around coronavirus. So one of the first things that we did as a district was to develop a task force of about 26 people that do have the background knowledge to be able to lead from in a variety of ways from around the coronavirus perspective. So about half of them are medical professionals. And these are the big dogs here in Columbus. So these are all the lead people in Columbus that are health professionals that can speak with a great knowledge base around the virus aspect of things. And then the other half of the group are people who are leading in safety things. So they're chiefs of police, they're fire department chiefs, they're lead city officials, mayors, and kind of those big decision-making people within larger communities that come together then and bring their expertise. And that's really, from my job standpoint, that's really where I'm getting most of my knowledge from. And it's from the experts. So that's one of the things that we can actually sort of encourage people to do, as they sort of start thinking through, how do I handle this? What's true and what's not true. Step away from social media, and get away from the things that just regular old folks are just saying because they are feeling certain ways, and rely heavily on those people that have this as a skill set that they've developed, that really have a knowledge base to lead from, because I want my children Hannah and Adam, I want them making informed decisions, as they go through life. But I want them to be well informed with the right information as they make those decisions. And Adam will tell you, we've had some pretty candid conversations as a family about decision making. What should I do? Should I go here? Should I not go here? Should I, what decisions do I make right now? We're having decisions with my son, who's just now 23, and talking about financially investing, as early in his life. What do we do? What is the best thing to do right now in terms of financially investing as you look at an economy that's rocky, and just to have those decisions that are made out of well-informed backgrounds with people that know kind of what they're talking about. For my work, it's shifted from an educational kind of safety kind of thing to more of a community kind of safety. So this is just some practical examples. So a fire station on 161 and Carl Road here in Columbus goes down a couple weeks ago because coronavirus enters the station.
Wow.
And everybody got exposed. And so the entire station has to go on lockdown then for 2 weeks. So we immediately started conversations with our fire department in New Albany and said, we're not using our school bus garage right now. We've got 50 buses that are just sitting in the lot right now, not going out because we're not in school. Why don't we split your station in half, bring half your crew over to the bus garage? Because the bus garage is set up in a way that can support you well. We've got restrooms, we've got shower capabilities, we've got a large lounge that can become your TV lounge. We've got places where you can bring your bunk beds in and sleep. And so we split the fire station in half. So they've got a substation over there now to where if the virus would show up, they don't take the whole entire station down at one time. We've got a police force that contacts me and says, we're low on our PPE, this personal protective equipment. We're low on gloves and masks and things like that. And we've ordered, but they're telling us the back order is going to take a while. I want our police force to stay healthy. I need them on the streets. I need them protecting our community. So I go to our biology department at our high school where they have kids who have to bring nitrite gloves as part of their classroom equipment and supplies that they bring. In a matter of 20 minutes, I collect 5,000 gloves. Wow. And I take 5,000 gloves over to the police department so that they have this personal protective equipment now that was going to be really slow coming. So just things like that, those things that I've shifted in terms of the things that I'm doing right now. And it's more community kind of based where I work hard at trying to get food to our neediest families. Yesterday, I just took a box truck down to Grove City to Mid-Ohio Food Bank, picked up about 3,000 pounds of food, drove it back up to New Albany, and it's being distributed out to those families that are truly, truly in need right now. So it's things like that, where we're still serving children in the community and just in different ways. So.
Yeah, that's all so good. I just want to call back to a couple things you just said. One of them is acting on accurate information, right? That's one big, really important piece, and something, as you said, we've talked about as a family in the past, in the recent past, and then from that information, sort of determining, okay, what's smart here, and what's not. So obviously, as someone who has a lot of experience doing this at a higher, professional level in the education world, when you think about people more in the everyday kind of lifestyle, what would you say are general sort of barometers or tools that can help us determine, based off of accurate information, what's smart and what's not smart right now, in general?
Well, I think that's where you want to lean on the people who know what they're talking about. They don't have to be people of faith, right? They need to be people of knowledge that can give you good advice when it comes to working with the virus. What do you do? So, as an example, in Ohio, and I don't know how many people will be maybe tying into your podcast, but your podcast would be outside of Ohio. But in Ohio, every day at 2:00, we have people that know what they're talking about that come on our TV station and give us the latest information, giving us statistics, giving us guidance as to what do we do. And that's an example where you want to go with the folks that know what they're talking about. There's a website called coronavirus.ohio.gov that gives daily updates as far as guidance of what you should be doing and could be doing. So if you want to know, should I be wearing a mask when I go to the grocery store or not? That's an example of something that's gone back and forth. If you want the latest information on should you be wearing a mask, go to coronavirus.ohio.gov, and you're going to get all the latest information as to what you really should be doing. Because the thing we want to do is to keep everyone as safe as possible, because it's super deceiving. So, because like right now in my work, I do a lot of stuff virtually. Some days I'll do 4 or 5 hours of virtual computer conversations. I'll go out in the backyard just to be outside, and I'll be on my computer in the backyard, and the birds are chirping and the sun's out, and you start to get this feeling like it can't be really as significant as it is. It's just so lovely.
Right.
Today,
Yes, but, I have felt that.
Yeah, but the reality is you want to pay attention to the people around you and their guidance, because we want to make sure that we have this unavoidable thing that's happening to us be have as little impact as possible. And so there's a balance in here somewhere, because I'm Adam and Hannah will tell you that I'm kind of a realist. That's kind of how I live life. I'm just one of I think that makes a good administrator, not to sound pretentious, but I mean, I think that's when you can just look at an issue that's happening in a school and say, okay, I think this is the decision that needs to be made. It's a tough one, but it's the reality of it. And so the same thing here. I'm gathering all this information on a daily basis from all the big people. So when I've got the president of Children's Hospital telling me, what's it looking like at Children's Hospital right now, that's all the information that I'm taking in, and it becomes a part of who I am in my decision making. But there's a balance in here somewhere, because I don't want to overwhelm people either with that information. I want them to have the information and to be making good decisions, but you don't want it to be all you talk about. You don't want it to be something that just, they may not be realists, and so it may be overwhelming to them and put them on the rear ends, thinking, okay, how am I supposed to live life, and they're losing sleep over it. So there's a balance point in there somewhere of gathering the information that you need, making good decisions based off of professionals that know what they're talking about, and then it's interesting, because there's also this piece of faith then that comes in there that says, there's things that I'm called to do as a person of faith that might ask me to push the limits a little bit. And I want to do it safely, so I'm the Bible tells us clearly in 2 Timothy that we're not given a spirit of timidity. Okay, but we're also not given a spirit of stupidity either. So you want to you want to make sure that the decisions that you're making are done well and done safely. So this food thing would be an example for me. I feel compelled as a person of faith that I need to meet that need. I need to do what I can do to meet that need in our community. So I don't have any problems grabbing a box truck and going down and filling a box truck with thousands of pounds of food. But when I come back and now there's all these volunteers that are coming to help unload this truck, I want to make sure that we're doing that safely and that we're not being stupid about it. I want to serve the people out of faith, out of serving God well, serving the kingdom well. But I have every one of those volunteers check their temperature to make sure that they're not coming in with a temperature. We're all wearing gloves. We're all socially distancing while we're doing this as much as we can. So you're just trying to be smart about it. So am I exposing myself a little bit? Probably. So like when I come home, first thing I do is I take my clothes off, because I could be carrying something from Mid-Ohio Food Bank or from the volunteers that came. And so the first thing I do is try to be smart coming home and do the right things, take a shower right away before I go interact with my family in any way. But still have this willingness to serve where the need is.
That's really good. I want to sit in that question just maybe even a little bit more. That is such a difficult thing for a lot of people. I think is the dichotomy of faith and fear. I love that example in 2 Timothy you gave, and saying, hey, we have this spirit through Christ who gives us courage to go out and do these things, but it doesn't mean be stupid. But at the same time, you find yourself, I find myself keep questioning, is this being careful? or is being careful right now the same as acting out of fear?
Yeah.
That's a question I ask myself, at least, a lot.
Right. Same.
There's a balance in there where you don't want to operate out of fear, but you do want to operate out of facts. So this is one of the things I was talking to our teachers about a lot, because candidly, we have a lot of people that their knee-jerk reaction is fearful. And so they have sort of these extreme reactions out of fear, but we don't want to operate out of fear. God's not called us to a spirit of fear, but we do want to operate out of facts. So I can't go blindly into it. So we have some things going on, so you've got these professionals standing up saying the way that you have the least impact is to socially distance yourself, where it's not airborne. So you can't get this if you socially distance yourself from the people who have it. But meanwhile, we have the news report last night talking about all the parties that are happening down at Ohio State's campus. We have churches across the nation that are still gathering together. Churches, people of faith, still gathering together, claiming that their faith is what will protect them. And so I think there's a balance in there somewhere of where you don't want to operate out of fear, but you do want to be smart about it, and you want to operate out of what are the truthful facts, and what's my responsibility now as a Christian to be making sure that I'm not contaminating, that I'm not, because I could be carrying right now and not know it, So one of the things I could be doing to protect others around me as well.
Yeah. I mean, you always had to face a lot of really hard questions and decisions and responsibility. I mean, was there any point along this process that you had to battle that fear yourself and had to learn to operate, more out of fact than out of fear?
Yeah. So, examples for me would be when this first comes out now, and now we need to, do some very practical things. So an example for me would be the state immediately starts calling for a need for personal protective equipment. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there thinking I've got a food service department that's filled with gloves. Every station that our kids go to has gloves that people are using. I've got a nursing clinics that are filled with gloves. And so that would be an example of where I feel compelled, I need to go get these gloves and I need to go do something about it. Well, meanwhile, we've found out that a person that directly works in this area that I need to go to has been taken in for COVID testing. So they've got all the symptoms. And so now the question is, do you go get the gloves and put it where the need is, knowing that you're going to an environment where there could be a virus still potentially active, or do you? And so that's when you do start to, I don't know if fear is the right word, but you start to really sort of question, is this smart? Should I really be doing this? And so that's when you rely on the facts. Okay, well, I know it's not airborne. I know that it can survive for a few days on equipment and things like that. So I need to be smart. I need to be wearing gloves. I need to not touch my face. I need to make sure that after I gather everything, that I'm doing it in the appropriate kind of way. I only delivered boxes that were unopened, but we gave like 10,000 gloves to FEMA to be able to pass out wherever the need is, because of the fact that they were just sitting in our food service and in our maintenance areas. And so that's an example of where you have to you do get this sort of, I don't know, kind of fearful posture of saying, okay, am I being stupid? Is this a safe thing to do? But then you just go out and you do it as safely as you can. And then when you come back, you're safe too. So that whole idea of making sure your home stays protected when you come back.
Yeah.
Doctors face this every day. I mean, doctors are doing it every day where they're coming home going, I don't want my family to get this. I want to go serve, but I need to make sure that I'm serving safely and that I'm coming home and interacting with family safely too.
Yeah. Wow, that's got to be. I mean, I just can't imagine having to, be that so careful every day because you're going out in it and being faced with it. And so you talked a lot about ways that you've been able to kind of use your role and your position to find the needs in the community and help the community. How does everyone else who maybe isn't in a position like you, how do they find those needs, and how can we meet those?
It's really interesting you would ask that question, because this is where I've kind of been living faith for the last few days. So I was telling Adam and Hannah the other day, over the last couple of years, I've decided from a devotional standpoint that I'm reading the Bible from start to finish. So I start Genesis 1 and I read the Bible straight through. And when I finish, I get another version of the Bible and I start at the beginning and I read straight through. Wow. And when I finish, I get another version. I start right at the beginning. I read right through. So right now I'm in the Message Bible, which is really interesting. A really interesting read, in terms of going straight through. It's kind of, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Message Bible, but it's written in very kind of common language. And this is where, somebody had said, I think, I'm not positive, but I think in this one verse I saw a recipe for Rice Krispie cookies. It's written in very common kind of language, But I'm in the process right now of going through the prophets. I'm in the section where I'm reading through the prophets right now as they're kind of looking at Israel and sort of trying to guide Israel as to what God's calling them to do. And it reminded me of this funny story from when I was in college. So I just finished Hosea, if you remember that book. But in college, I was in a college choir. And for the last 2 years, I was a college president. And we had our concerts split in two, where we do the first half in like formal wear, like tuxes kind of stuff, and then we would leave and go change into more casual conversation. And the first half of the concert was very art song kind of stuff, and the second half was very contemporary. And in between, they always asked me as the president to greet the congregation while everybody was sort of changing. And we would say hello, and I would do this really short kind of devotional. Well, I went on 32 choir tours. And so after a while, and those choir tours sometimes were 5 days, 10 days, and each day you're doing a devotional. And so after 32 of those, you're starting to think, okay, what do I talk about now? Kind of thing. And so I was on this charter bus heading to this church, and I decided, what, God, I'm just going to let you determine what I'm going to talk about tonight. I'm just going to let this Bible fall open on my lap, and I'm going to put my finger down on the page, and wherever my finger lands, that's the verse that I'm going to share with this group tonight. So I open up, I let the Bible sort of fall open, and my head's kind of back in the seat, and I drop my finger down on the page, and this is the verse that God's calling me to speak about tonight with this group. And my finger lands on Hosea 1:2, and it says, "Thou shalt take unto thyself a harlot as thy wife." And here I am, a 22-year-old kid. I'm like, what you got? Oh my gosh. This is like, there's a Christian comedian named Ken Sawyers would say, I don't think you're going to see that verse cross-stitched on a pillow. It's one of those ones where, what in the world? Why would God ask someone to take a prostitute as their wife?
Oh my gosh.
And so it forces me then to sort of back up a little bit. And so I back up to say, why would God ask this guy to take a prostitute as his wife? And I end up going back to 2 Chronicles, where David had been king and Solomon's taking over, and God tells Solomon, tell me what you want. As you're coming in as king, what is it that I can give you? And Solomon asks for wisdom. And God is just so thrilled with the fact that instead of asking for money, instead of asking for fame, Solomon asks for wisdom. And in that conversation that he's kind of having with Solomon, God says, you're going to lead wisely. I'm going to give you this, but I'm letting you know there's going to be famine around you. There's going to be plague around you. And he sort of lists these things that are going to take place. But then God brings us a verse in 2 Chronicles where he says, but if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and will pray to me and turn away from their wicked ways, then I'll hear from heaven and I'll heal their land. And God gives Solomon this kind of guidance that says, I'm going to give it to you, but we're looking at a rough road up here where things are going to be happening, and these are the things I need you to do. Yeah. And then the nation doesn't really follow yet. And so God sends these prophets and he sends Ezekiel, and Ezekiel sees these visions, and he sends Daniel, and Daniel interprets these dreams, and then he sends Hosea. And Hosea, he says, take a harlot as your wife. And so Hosea does that. He goes and gets this lady named Gomer, who's a prostitute, marries her, they have children, but then Gomer goes off and keeps prostituting. And Hosea turns to God and says, what the heck? I thought you asked me to go get her as my wife. She won't even stay as my wife. And God says, that's purposeful, because here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to her now. She's actually sleeping with someone right now. Go to her right now while she's sleeping with this guy and tell her that she needs to return to you and that she needs to be faithful to you in your marriage. And so Hosea just does what he's told, and he goes and finds Gomer with this guy and asks Gomer to come back and to just be faithful to him. And then God's saying, that's what I'm asking Israel to do. Israel has been completely unfaithful. The church has been completely unfaithful to me. I bring them out of Egypt. I show them all these miracles. I guide them through the wilderness where no one else could, and they still have gone and done their own sex shrines, and they've carved gods out of wood and are praying to this worthless piece of wood. They've been completely prostituting themselves to other gods. But I'm loving them to the point that I'm asking them to come back and to be faithful to me. And then so that's what Hosea does, and he uses his relationship with Gomer then to use as an example of this is what God can do for us as a nation. That he'll be willing to take us back like this. But then it goes into Joel. I was just reading the other day, if you guys don't mind me pulling this out really quick, because this is the part that was just like, oh my gosh. Joel, they've just been devastated by locusts. So it's not the coronavirus, but locusts have just come in and wiped out this place. And then here's what Joel says. Listen to this. He says, this is Joel prophesying what God is telling him and to the people. And he says, Joel tells the people about God, come back to me and really mean it. Be sorry for your sins. This is the Message Bible, change your life, not just your clothes. And so I immediately start thinking of my own self. I come in every night after I've been out taking food, and the first thing I do is I take my clothes off because I don't want that virus coming in the home. But God says, I'm not worried about your clothes. I'm worried about your life. Change your life. Come back to God, your God. Here's why. God is kind. He's merciful. He takes a deep breath. He puts up with a lot. He's patient. He's extravagant in love. He's always ready to cancel this catastrophe. That's what the word actually says. Now, they're talking about a famine at the time, but today it's the coronavirus. Who knows? Maybe he'll cancel it right now. Maybe he'll cancel it today and show pity. And when all said and done, blessings will be full and robust. And then he starts talking about blow the ram's horn, let everybody know, call a public meeting. We do a public meeting every day at 2 o'clock in Ohio. Our church was just on ABC 6. I think they said something like 42,000 homes between devices and TV, 42,000 homes. They've called a public meeting right now to say, come back to God. Here's the other part that cracked me up that you guys will understand. It said, bring your children, bring your nursing babies, even men and women who are at their weddings and are on their honeymoon. Interrupt them and get them there. How many weddings do we know this spring that have been stopped because they can't do it right now? They've been interrupted with the thought that it can draw their attention back to what the significance of the moment is. So the reality for me is that this catastrophe, the coronavirus that we're in, isn't the absence of God, and this is getting to the question that was really there, like, what do we do now? What I'm finding out in my own life and the people that I work with, as an example, is that these are folks that maybe haven't thought of God in years. And now, because of the moment right now, they have their attention drawn to God, but they're thinking it's the absence of God. They're thinking God's angry and has turned his back on us. They're thinking that we're being punished, for some sin that we've done, kind of thing. And the reality is for us is that this is an opportunity for us to show that this is the presence of God that we're seeing right now, because these catastrophes like the coronavirus suddenly draw you out of your routine. They smash your sort of self-preoccupation to smithereens,
Yeah, right.
And the sort of basics, normal aspects of life are just completely gone now. So I can't even go to a restaurant anymore. I can't, all those things where I thought I was large and in charge, suddenly I may not even have a paycheck. I may not have charge of anything at this moment. And so now what it's done is it's stripped all that stuff away, and all we have left over is this sort of spiritual reality. This is what I've been getting in this sort of reading through these prophets right now, is that through these catastrophes, because half these prophets are dealing with catastrophes, it sort of strips everything away and shows you the spiritual reality of it's just kind of me and God right now. And it's me recognizing that I'm nowhere close to being like God. And so what it's doing is maybe not drawing us into so much the coronavirus things where I should be taking gloves to people and doing all those things I find myself doing because of my work, but it is drawing us in as people of faith to be engaging in relationship with people. And so we want to be identifying the needs around us for sure. Like I live next door to elderly in-laws that we want to make sure we're meeting their needs. So are there people around you that you feel like you could help in meeting their needs? Are there people you could go get their groceries for them? Is there someone who's blown out a back or something, that you can support by doing some activity for them? But we find ourselves where we want to be kind of intentionally engaging in relationship with people right now. And it's probably through social media, not social media, but it's probably through virtual kinds of things like we're doing right now.
Right.
Be intentional about reaching out to people and those people that God places on your heart, because it is ripe right now in terms of everything's been stripped away, and everybody recognizes right now that God is large and in charge. And what can I do now to just sort of be in relationship to him in a healthy way?
Yeah. Wow, that's a really interesting way to think about that. And I like how we journeyed through all these different prophets to really think about, what is this time really, and what is it saying to people, and what's the mindset that people are in. And that's fascinating. I really like that. So go ahead, Adam.
No, I was just going to say, I think if you have something else to add, I was going to point us towards our potentially, boiling a lot of this really good conversation down to three kind of concrete steps. So I think there were a lot of different things you pointed towards, like just here at the end, about being intentional. Find ways you can meet the needs of others, because right now in this season, the people are ripe to hearing, to having their ears open.
People are very open.
Yeah, so I guess, based off of all this conversation, maybe what are three concrete steps listener can walk away with and say, okay, these are three things I can take away from this conversation and start taking action on?
I think the first one is acting on accurate info. That was one of the first things that, John, you said that I wrote that down. I was like, that's something we can easily take away and we can start doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, if you were asking me what are the three, I mean, the three that come out for me would be, that we want to look for need. As people of faith, we want to be able to look for need. So it's not just all about us still. We want to be, in whatever way we can safely, be looking for the needs around us. I do think that you need to be intentional about engaging with others. So we have, I think, the tendency to withdraw in moments like this, where we're kind of locked into our home anyway, and we're doing all of our work from home. And so we tend to sort of get more withdrawn over time as the longer that it goes, and kind of the more withdrawn. So be intentional about reaching out. Our family, as an example, is really intentional about at least once a week coming together, where we watch church online, and then we come together as a family following that, and we just have conversation together as a family. And then I've been writing out the people. I've actually listed. I've got 35 people listed in my Bible of people that I want to be intentional about reaching out to, that I'm in relationship with, primarily through work. And so
that's great.
Each week I'm just sort of checking off other people off that list that I've been intentional about reaching out to and just being in relationship with. And so you want to be intentional about staying in relationship, because we have the tendency, I think, to withdraw from relationship in these moments.
Yeah.
And then the other one is really
good.
kind of where you were going for me, would be this thought of, I want to be making sure that my actions are responsible kind of in nature. That the things that I'm doing are in well-informed decisions, knowing that my decisions determine the outcomes of whatever it is I'm dealing with at that moment. So whatever event's happening in my life at this moment, my response to it is going to determine whatever the outcome is. And so I want to make sure that I'm having a well-informed response and that I'm making kind of clear decisions based in fact and not fear.
Those are great. So look for a need.
That's perfect.
Be intentional, and guide your actions towards responsibility, especially along lines of accurate information, facts.
Right.
Act out of fact, not out of fear.
Love it.
Me too.
All right. Well, Jon, thank you so much for all of this, just, knowledge and perspective that you've dropped on us. I mean, this has been really, really fun. One thing that I don't know if you've listened to the previous episodes, I usually ask Adam at the end to give us some fatherly advice, and he doesn't like it because he's not a father, and it doesn't make sense to him. It makes sense to me. But he recommended that we ask you for some fatherly advice here to leave our people with, so we can end on this wise note.
Well, that's quite a task to leave you on a wise note. From a spiritual kind of standpoint, let me give you some fatherly advice from a spiritual standpoint. It would be Matthew, I think it's 20, maybe 22. I think it's Matthew 22, where the disciples come to Jesus and they say, of all these commandments, which ones have the greatest value? And Jesus' response keeps it super simple for us. And he just says, love God with all your heart, and then love other people. So that's from the spiritual side. I would say that's my fatherly advice to you, is that invest yourself fully in God. And then through that kind of relationship that you develop with God, then turn and go love others. Don't judge them. Don't hold out these things that they're doing that are appalling to you as the thing that guides you. Just love on them, through God's love. So that's my spiritual side of it. My sort of what would I tell a kid at school kind of side of it would be a simple equation that I've talked with my family about before, which is this: E plus R equals O, which comes from an organization called Focus 3, but it stands for every event in our life plus our response will equal the outcome. So when we find ourselves in a situation like this, and that's true, that's just general truth, so and it works in reverse too. Whatever outcome I want in my life, I got to look at what are the behaviors or the response that precedes that. So if the outcome is I want to lose weight, the answer isn't go buy a really nice pair of running shoes. The answer is, what are my behaviors that will get me that outcome? And so as we look at ourselves in this situation right now in terms of this coronavirus and what do we do? The event is the coronavirus. I have no control over it whatsoever, but I have complete control over this response that I have to it. I have control over my attitude every day when I get up. I have control over whether I'm smart when I go outside and take precautions to be safe when I go to the grocery store. I've got complete control over my response to things, which will determine for us as a nation, for us as a family, for us as friends, it'll determine what the outcome is. So that's my spiritual fatherly advice and my non-spiritual fatherly advice.
I love it. We got heavenly father advice and we've got fatherly advice.
Earthly advice. That's right. Yeah.
Earthly father. Yeah, that's right.
Definitely the best fatherly advice we've gotten so far. Well,
I don't know. Wash behind your ears was pretty good.
Thank you. I have my moments. Thank you, Jon, so much for joining us today.
What a great way to start the day.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we'll definitely talk again soon, and thanks for listening, everybody.